All right. Well, hello and welcome. Just wanted to make sure that we are live. My name is Lisa Callahan, and I am the founder of the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. Okay, let's do that again. Let's make sure that we're live. Sometimes there's a little delay. My name is Lisa Callahan, and I'm the founder of the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. And I also have an amazing program called Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, where I help women to identify their invisible emotional relationship with food through taking a journey of self-discovery. So, our topic today is time for a change, 6 ways to accept yourself just the way you are. Now, this is a little trick because if you are ready for a change, if you feel that it is time for a change, then accepting yourself just the way you are is actually going to steer you in the direction of staying stuck. So, I lured you in here with that topic because I feel like a lot of women feel like they don't accept themselves just the way they are, and they feel like this is part of the problem. Now, I agree. However, again, if you feel like you are ready for a change, then accepting yourself just the way you are is not going to work. You're going to have to do something to change. Now, many of the women that are in this community, of course, are struggling with emotional eating on top of that. But in self-discovery, we kind of blend the two worlds together because we're able to see what our purpose is as a human being, and we're able to see where some of that piece of what we feel about ourselves is intertwined with our food thing, as I call it. And the food thing pretty much means that you are not able to, determine what is your purpose? Why are you here? What are the things that keep making you feel stuck? What are the things that make you feel less than? Where are the mistakes that you've made in your life? Where are the places where you feel like you're kind of burying yourself alive in some way? And that food is the only piece, the only feeling that you get all day long maybe that makes you feel comfortable, yet at the same time keeps you stuck, staying super uncomfortable. So when we talk about this, we blend the topics. Really, we kind of push the food a little bit aside and we start to talk about you as a person. So with this topic today, we're going to be talking about accepting yourself. And I'm going to give you 6 ways that you can accept yourself just the way you are so that you can make time for change or make room for change in your mindset. Because so many times we are the one thing that's standing in our own way. And if we're standing in our own way, well, then nothing can help us because we're blocking it. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing that I want you to think about is your purpose. So thing 1 on how to accept yourself is your purpose. Why do you want to accept yourself? What's the big deal? Why don't you accept yourself now? So you can write this down. A closed mind cannot accept any new ideas. And so many times we have this image of ourselves maybe dating us back to 20, 30 years ago. Maybe there's things or times or people that made us feel less than. And so we are filled with self-doubt, which is why we might not accept ourselves just the way we are, because somebody else told us so. Well, let me just share that someone can put self-doubt into your mind, but you're the only one that can accept it. And so when I say a closed mind cannot accept any new ideas, I mean it. So if your mind is closed around something that put self-doubt into it, well, then we're just going to stay stuck there. So we have to have a purpose for changing that, because it's like, why don't you just keep accepting those things that make you feel doubtful about yourself? Why not? If you keep accepting the things that make you feel doubtful about yourself, how does that impact your life? If you stop accepting the things that make you feel doubtful of yourself, how will your life change? So without finding a purpose, without understanding why you want change to begin with, we'll just stay kind of swirling around in a circular motion around the fear of change. And that's why I say that this topic today is a little bit interesting, because it's like, time for a change. Yes, I want to change. And yet I want to stay stuck too. And I want to share, ladies, you can't have both. So we have to be able to come up with a purpose. Why do you want to change? And what can you accept about yourself, about your past, about your future, that allows you to be able to accept that you will have to change in order to move away from the place that you feel stuck. And I hope that makes sense. And please share with me in the comments if there's anything that you have questions about, and I will try and answer the comments even if it's after this video. So that's thing one. Thing two is to stop belittling yourself. Many times I have heard women say like, I'm just not ready. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. Everything around me is crumbling and I have to, do X, Y, and Z, and I don't have enough energy. I just can't fight it anymore. And so what we tend to do is we tend to put ourselves into a very small place. What I know is that we cannot outperform our self-image. So think about that, write that down. We cannot outperform our self-image. So whether we think we can or we think we can't, we'll be right. So if you're belittling yourself, if you're shutting yourself down emotionally, if you're blocking your spiritual energy, if you're whirling yourself in your mind with all sorts of negative thoughts, well, that's going to keep you stuck. And so again, which team are you campaigning for? Are you campaigning for, hey, I want to change, which AKA means you have to do something different? You just can't have both, right? You can't want to change and then not be willing to. And so this whole thought about the mindset, you have to get out of your own head so that you will allow yourself to make a change. Now, when we're talking about accepting yourself just how you are, what that means is that you'll have to become aware of your thoughts, and you'll have to say to yourself, wow, these thoughts, they are mine. They are coming from me. They're not anchored to the past. They're not limiting me for the future. They're me. They're my thoughts. And then you're going to have an opportunity to be able to challenge those thoughts, because you don't have to believe everything you think. Now, this is a new concept, right? Why wouldn't I believe everything I think, Lisa? It's my head. It's coming from my mind. But again, if you want to change, then if you're the one that's telling yourself you can't, or you're the one that's standing in your own way, or you're the one that's belittling yourself, or telling yourself to be scared, or telling yourself that you're so stuck, or telling yourself that you're hopeless or helpless, or you can't do it, or whatever, then that's on you. And so I want you to be able to accept that about yourself. I want you to be able to become aware of your own stinking thinking. This could be the way to accept that this is on you. And when you accept that this is on you, it's going to be a really great opportunity for you to be able to move forward, because now you know that you have the freedom to think whatever you want to think. And so if you're choosing to think things that are steering you away from change because you're scared, because you feel less than, because you feel limited, well, again, that's on you. So now it's like, wow, I have an opportunity to know that about myself and to be able to move away from it. So let me make sure that I got everything in that I wanted to. Oh yes, hang on. Every day is a new opportunity to slay the negative dragon in your mind. Think about that. Every single day is a new opportunity to slay the negative dragon in your mind. I love that one. Number 3 is to accept the season that you're in. But just remember that it's a season. If it's something that you've camped out in for decades, that's not a season. That's like camping out in winter all year long. That's not okay. I have heard many women say, well, this is just a season. And then I ask them, I say, well, how long have you been stuck? And they like, since I was 12, and they're 60. And it's like, no, that's not just a season. You're camped out somewhere. And so really to be able to say, okay, this is a season, and to be able to accept that seasons change. So many times we get stuck in a past pattern and habit because we are unwilling to accept ourselves in the season that we're in, and we're unwilling to accept that it's a season, right? A season changes at least 4 times a year, as far as I know. So if we're going to use that, thought process, right, that this is just a season, well, don't camp out there forever. Challenge yourself to accept the season that you're in, and then know that there is room for growth out of that season. Because if you're going to think about it as like, okay, this is what happened right now, that's okay, then you'll be able to accept that you have the freedom to move yourself out of that season. That's an important piece of the puzzle, that you have the freedom to move yourself out of that season. So number 4 is to trust yourself. Forgive yourself for past mistakes. You are human, and many times we stayed anchored in our fears, basically because we feel guilty, we feel ashamed, we feel embarrassed, we feel uncomfortable, and we feel like we've made a ton of mistakes, and then we beat ourselves up for it forever. Well, when you're going to accept yourself, accept that you're human, accept that mistakes are opportunities to learn. If you cannot accept your mistakes and you become corroded with those mistakes, well, that's not learning. That's taking that mistake and using it for the wrong reason. And what a shame, because it makes the mistake worthless. A mistake is meant to learn from, right? That's why we have erasers. That's why when we're little kids, and you raise your hand and you say the wrong answer, the teacher says, no, that's not the right answer. Let me teach you about what the right answer is. And so when we basically stay stuck in our mistakes, it's such a shame because it makes the mistake meaningless. So what was the purpose of that? So I just want to read a little teeny bit about self-acceptance and mistakes. So with self-acceptance, you can study your mistake and look at where it applies to what you're supposed to learn. When you sit in guilt, your mistake now becomes worthless. Some things cannot be fixed. They can only be carried. So what that means is that if the mistake is being carried, then you're not able to learn what you were supposed to learn from it. And that is a piece that you are not accepting about yourself. And so that's, again, where the self-acceptance piece is going to be able to set you free so that you can change. So it's time to accept your mistakes and forgive yourself for the past so that you can decide what you want to do with those mistakes. Okay, number 5 is set yourself free of guilt, shame, blame, and regret. If you feel like you want to sit in those feelings, in shame and in guilt, you will continue to have to fuel them. So interestingly enough, with emotional eating, this was where I got stuck. I got stuck in guilt and shame. I always used to say, like, I don't get it. Like, I don't know why I feel so like, if I could just not feel guilty, then I'll be okay kind of thing. Well, I realized somewhere between the self-discovery piece and learning that I had an emotional eating habit, basically like a binge eating disorder, like I really did, what I recognized, I put the 2 and 2 together and I was like, oh my gosh, every time I eat, to the point where I'm full, I'm stuffed, I'm angry with myself, I'm berating myself, I'm belittling myself. Every time I do that, it leads me to guilt. So I realized that as long as I was going to keep guilt as my best friend, like kind of on my backpack and run around with it, when I wanted to experience guilt, all I had to do was eat a box of cookies. That was super easy. I mean, you can't eat a box of cookies without feeling guilty. I mean, I guess you can, but if you do, it's because you're fueling another feeling. For me, it was guilt. For you, it might be something different, but it all ends up being the same. And so being able to accept this part of ourselves, being able to say like, hey, yeah, I relate to that. That's me. I'm doing that too. And being able to be aware of it so that you can actually have the freedom to make a change, that is one part of yourself that you can easily accept, right? You kind of know what your feelings are. So at the end of a binge, right, ask yourself, like, what's the result? What do I feel now? Do I feel worthless? Do I feel, sad? Do I feel hurt? Do I feel angry? What do you feel at the end of that binge? And then be able to understand that whatever it is that you feel after the binge is what you were fueling, right? So when we look at it that way and we accept that, right? This is pieces of yourself. You're accepting yourself just the way you are. So when I learned that and I accepted that, the next time I went to go eat something and I was like, I looked at it, instead of seeing a cookie, I saw guilt. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm after guilt. And then I was looking at that cookie and going, why do you want to feel guilty right now, Lisa? And so once I was able to accept that, it changed everything. I'm just going to read a little bit about this topic. So let me see. It says, I think this is from Brene Brown, by the way. I pretty much just copied it down. I believe it's from her. It says, you're in charge of the way that you act. You're letting situations make you who you are. This leads you away from your authentic self. It's like standing too close to an automatic door. It will just continue to open and shut. As you move away from the door, you can have a choice of when you want it to open and shut, right? That was me looking at that cookie going, do I want to feel guilty right now? I don't think so. So I'm going to back away from the automatic door. No longer do situations lead you to responses, right? Like if I had eaten those cookies, it would lead me to that guilt, right? Your ability to respond leads you to situations. Forgiving, which is what we were talking about earlier, is knowing that you and other human beings are all connected. The depth of your shame shows you the strength of your character. If your shame is overtaking your character, this is making your character weak. Strength will only grow as you step away from the shame. Shame cannot live in the light. It can only live in past shadows. So this is an interesting piece because once you're able to accept what it is that you're getting from the results after you are fueling that feeling, right? Once you're able to accept that, well, then you have a whole new ability to be able to respond to yourself in a different way, which will allow you to change. The last thing is, accept the mistakes. Okay, the last thing is stay in your own lane. You have to put on your oxygen mask first. You cannot love anyone or anything more than yourself. I know that this feels impossible sometimes because it's kind of like, nope, I put my parents and my spouse and my kids and all that stuff first, right? If you think about it in this way, it will always lead you to a lack of boundaries, which will also always anchor you in resentment. There's no way around it. You cannot give and give and give and give and give and give and give without ending up being resentful somewhere along the way. And so resentment is always, almost always anchored to a lack of boundaries. And so when you're not putting on your own oxygen mask first, it allows you to kind of put yourself in the back burner, put yourself in the back corner and like be okay with it, which does not work because it will lead you to feeling empty and it will lead you to feeling depleted and it will lead you to feeling resentful. And if you feel that way, then you'll have to fuel yourself back up with more negative feelings, which again keeps you stuck in a swirl of lack of self-acceptance. I think I have one more thing to read here. So changing, you have to think about this from this perspective. Are you going to live 100 years or are you going to live 1 year 100 times? So think about this, right? Thinking over a lifespan. So 100 would be like a goal number, I guess. But think about it like that and think about it like sometimes we get stuck in one space in our minds, right? And so it's like 1 year gets relived over and over and over again. Every time you try and get away from it, you just bring yourself right back to that one period of time in your life, which is why we get stuck in a lack of self-acceptance because we're not accepting our lives, our seasons, our mistakes, our, shame, we're not accepting it. And so if we can accept it, then we'll have an opportunity to be able to move forward in our lives so that we can live a new life every year instead of being stuck in the old life of 1 year, right? And so this whole concept allows you to move freely to your future self. So reliving the same things over and over again hinders your ability to see what's on the other side of your fears. There may be a whole new life of endless possibilities, but you can't get there because you're stuck reliving one mistake or one circumstance or one failure. Expose your guilt, expose your mistakes, come out of the darkness of your shame. So I hope that this helped today. There's so much to explore, so many opportunities, and so much that self-discovery can teach you. If anything that I said today was confusing to you, that's awesome. I hope that it's a little bit confusing to you, because if you knew all the answers to yourself, well, you wouldn't be here, right? You wouldn't feel stuck. And so self-discovery is an opportunity to get curious. I don't have the answers for you. You do. They're inside of you. And sometimes they can get locked. And if they get locked, it is always locked around fear. So, ask yourself, if you had a coin in your hand and you were going to flip it, and one side of the coin had love on it and the other side had fear, which side would you want the coin to land on? I hope you say love, and I hope that we meet again. And if we do, hopefully we'll be connecting in the Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System program. There will be a link on here to request either a copy of this training or possibly a free call if you wanted to go ahead and talk about this further. All right, everybody have a nice day. Thank you. Bye now.